Good evening, my name is Arturo, and today I am here to share with you this unsettling story that unfortunately I had to live through due to a twist of fate. This happened several years ago when I was younger and could still ride my bike. Now, I'm an older man and can no longer ride it. But anyway, this story is a bit delicate, so if you're sensitive, I suggest you might not want to listen. This is the first time I've worked up the courage to tell it to many people. Being a cyclist was always my favorite hobby. Since I lived in a place with many forest parks, I loved going alone or with friends to those beautiful places full of nature and spending the whole afternoon there. One afternoon, I drove to a very large forest park that was about 2 hours from my city. I planned to spend the entire afternoon exploring that beautiful forest on my bike until nightfall. The place was immense and it was easy to get lost, but I was well equipped and had a lot of experience, so I felt confident entering that imposing place with its tall trees. There were very few people on bikes in that area, and the farther I went into the forest, the more alone I became. It was getting dark, and I decided it was time to head back to reach my car before it got completely dark, as it would be harder to ride my bike with so many branches around. I was just about to turn my bike around when, about 5 meters away, half hidden behind a tree, I saw a little girl standing there. She was very small. I guessed she was between 6 and 9 years old. Her hair was brown. I couldn't see her clothes because her body was still behind a tree and only her head was peeking out. It seemed extremely strange to me to see her there, as it was such a deep place in the forest. No matter how much I looked around, I couldn't see her parents nearby. The area was completely empty, with only the sounds of birds in the background. I asked her, "Are you lost, little girl?" But she didn't answer. She just kept watching me from behind the immense tree. I started to feel very uncomfortable being alone with her, as the situation was quite strange, and the place was getting darker. I insisted again, asking her if she was lost, where her parents were, and how she had gotten there. But again, there was no response. In moments like these, you feel frozen because you don't know how to react or what to do. I didn't want to leave her alone there, and I didn't have cell reception to ask for help for her. There was a moment of silence as I thought about what to do, but then I saw her step out from behind the tree and start walking deeper into the immense forest. I began walking behind her with my bike beside me, trying to talk to her so she would listen to me, but I also didn't want to scare her. I noticed that her small dress was very dirty and torn in some places. I kept walking behind her, keeping a respectful distance as I didn't want to frighten her. But truth be told, I was the one who was afraid of her. We didn't walk far, but it felt like an eternity when, suddenly, I saw her enter a very strange place. It was like a cave, or rather, a giant rock with a crevice that people could fit through, from which, by the way, a nauseating smell emanated. The girl went inside and she didn't come out. By this point, it was completely dark. I turned on the flashlight on my helmet and leaned in to look, and what I saw there is something I wouldn't wish for anyone to see. There was the body of a small girl in a state of decomposition. She was wearing the same dress as the girl and had the same brown hair. I immediately had to vomit. I couldn't handle it. Trembling and crying, I rushed out as fast as I could on my bike. I fell several times but didn't even feel the pain. My shock and the adrenaline of the moment were too strong. Of course, I informed the authorities as soon as I got out of there, and they followed the proper protocols. I don't know what kind of monster could have done that to such a young girl, or if it was some animal, as this news never made it to any media. I never found it, no matter how hard I looked for it. But what was hardest for me to believe, understand, and even tell was how I had ended up in that place, as I couldn't even believe myself that the spirit of that little girl had led me to her remains. That was the first and last time I saw something paranormal. So imagine the terrible impact. It is something that still pains me to recount, and I do so with all the respect for that little girl who now, I hope, rests in peace. My name is Enrique. Today I want to share a story with you about something that happened to my ex-girlfriend and me a few years ago, when we would go on long bike rides along a dirt path next to a very busy highway in my city. This was extremely eerie, and I still can't believe we experienced it ourselves. Several friends who also rode bikes had told us this story, but we never believed them. My ex-girlfriend's name is Perla, and she convinced me to go biking there because at the end of the trail there's a beautiful creek and lots of nature. We went in the late afternoon because it was summer, and the heat was intense. It was impossible to go out during the day. We were riding along that long path, enjoying the scenery and the sound of the birds. We didn't talk much because we preferred to just take in the nature around us. I remember Perla was riding behind me because the path was very narrow and had two-way traffic. Although I should mention, there weren't many people. At most, we had seen another couple of cyclists coming back, and everything was very calm and lonely. We were more than halfway to the creek when suddenly, Perla fell off her bike. I only heard the thud and immediately braked to help her. I ran over and asked if she was okay, but as I helped her up, she kept staring at a specific spot among the bushes on the side of the path. I turned to see what she was looking at because she wasn't responding and had a frightened look on her face. I asked again what had happened and she said, "I saw someone watching us. It was a very tall man, but I couldn't see his face because the branches were covering it, and I lost control." I asked if she was sure, and she, clearly agitated, kept insisting, begging me to believe her. Trying to calm her down, I told her I did believe her, and went to peek as much as I could to see if the man was still there. But I didn't see anyone, at least not in sight. I told her we should leave, and she got back on her bike. This time I told her to go in front of me so I could watch her and protect her just in case. We rode another stretch towards the creek, and again Perla screamed. But this time she didn't stop or fall. It was just a scream of fear. I asked again what had happened. She told me, still very upset, that she had seen him again, and this time she saw his face and it was horrible. So we hurried out of there quickly. At this point I didn't know if she was trying to play a prank on me, but I dismissed that idea because I didn't think she would fall and hurt herself just to prank me. I knew her very well, and I could tell when she was genuinely scared, and she was terrified at that moment. We kept pedaling and we finally reached the creek. We got off our bikes and sat on the ground for a few minutes to rest and talk about what had happened. She told me again what she had seen and described the man as very tall, wearing dress pants and a formal shirt, with a face that looked disfigured, and both times he was spying on us. She couldn't understand how he had managed to move so quickly from one place to another without making any noise if he had been running. While we were talking, an older man was fishing nearby on a rock, and out of nowhere he told us, "Go home now. It's getting dark, and that man loves to scare people, sometimes even make them disappear." I asked him who that man was and why he was saying that about him. To which he replied, "He was a man who worked in the city but lived near my house. One night, his car broke down halfway, so he decided to walk home. But a drunk teenager who was also coming back ran him over with his car because he said he didn't see him on the dark road, and the man died instantly. The people of this town have seen him walking along that road at night, and many cyclists who come here also see him or get spied on by him just like you two. Some even disappear and are never seen again. That's why I'm telling you, leave now before the sun sets completely." Somewhat skeptical but still scared, I thanked the man and told Perla we should leave. She was very nervous and frightened, especially since, unfortunately, she had seen him. It was almost night by then. Perla was in front of me again and we were halfway back when suddenly I saw him too. He was there again on the side of the path behind some bushes. I could see his very tall silhouette. I didn't want to say anything to Perla to avoid scaring her even more, especially since it was all different now that it was dark. I felt a lot of fear and chills, something indescribable that I think only people who have experienced such things can understand. Thank God we got out of there safe and sound. We reached the car and left, and we never went back. So if a friend or acquaintance tells you that strange things happen in a certain place, give them the benefit of the doubt, because they might be telling the truth, and it could save you from a bad experience or a good scare like the one we had. My boyfriend and I had a paranormal experience a few months ago while we were on the road. We've both been cyclists for a long time, and we met during one of those races that are held every 6 months in my city. We always like to go out to a road that's close to where we live because it's closed off to vehicles due to its danger. It's only used by cyclists or people who go running there. That day we spent a lot of time there. It has incredible views, so we took pictures and rode our bikes as much as we could. It got dark on our way back, but that wasn't a problem for us. In fact, we loved biking at night, and we still saw people passing by on their bicycles, so we didn't feel unsafe in that regard. The strange thing happened when we were further ahead on a stretch where there's a cliff. We both noticed that people were climbing up there. It was still very far away, but close enough to see the silhouettes of people trying to climb up to the road. My girlfriend got alarmed, but she could sense that they weren't people from this plane. I wanted to go help, but she stopped me. She said, "Don't go, don't look back at them. It's better if they don't notice you, they're no longer here." My girlfriend has always been very spiritual, and since she was a child, she's been able to see things that normal people can't. She even used to talk to her deceased grandfather when she was just a little girl and said she could see him. But that's not the point here. I just wanted to explain why I believed her immediately when she told me that. So I obeyed right away, turned my gaze away, and we both slowed down our bikes. And indeed, when we passed by the spot where those people were trying to climb up, there was absolutely no one there. We even leaned over to shine a light, but there weren't even any footprints. It was as if they had vanished. My girlfriend said to me, "I told you." I was very surprised and a little scared too, although it wasn't so far-fetched that something like that could happen there. They've lost count of how many cars have gone over that cliff and how many people have lost their lives there. You have to show them a lot of respect. They are souls that might not have found their way yet. At least that's what my girlfriend has explained to me. And I believe her because I experienced it firsthand, and I still can't believe it. It was the first and only time I've seen what you could call ghosts. Hello, community. My name is Guillermo, but everyone calls me Memo, and I live in the north of Mexico. I've been a cyclist for years, and I love it. I've even participated in races, and I have several friends who are also cyclists. Some of them used to show me routes outside of my city in the countryside, where you could pedal without any issues. However, that's not as easy anymore due to the increase in crime. This happened to me almost 2 years ago on a day when I decided to go explore outside my city on my bike. I really enjoy riding through the countryside because I love seeing nature. That day, I went out alone, which is something I almost never do, but all my friends were busy, so I decided to go by myself anyway. After riding a long way on the road, I saw a dirt path through the brush that caught my attention, so I decided to take it and see where it would lead me. The day was very cloudy, which worked in my favor because I get tired much less quickly when there's no sun. I don't know how long I rode, but it was getting close to 7 p.m. when suddenly I saw a woman walking with grocery bags. She was signaling for me to come over, as if she wanted to tell me something. I approached her, and before I could ask what she needed, she said the following: "You need to leave here, young man. It's very dangerous. It's not safe to be around here at this time. You should go home now." I asked her why it was dangerous because I couldn't just leave without knowing. She pointed with her finger and told me that in those 2 abandoned houses, people were deprived of their freedom and terrible things happened to them as night fell. She also mentioned that the souls of all the people whose lives were taken in that way wandered these paths at night. The town turned into a ghost town after 8 p.m. because no one wanted to leave their houses, and it was known that strangers weren't welcome, by the living or the dead. After hearing all that, I didn't know whether to believe her. Even though she seemed very serious, I just thanked her, and she went on her way. But now you're going to blame me for what happened next because I didn't listen to the lady and went on being curious. It was getting dark, but there was still a bit of light. I decided to take a look around those houses, which were honestly falling apart. I didn't see anyone there, and there were no vehicles parked, so I knew they were empty. I got a little closer just to see if I could spot anything. I don't know, I was looking for an adventure. Then the worst happened. I started hearing desperate screams of pain, but a very terrible pain. And the most traumatic thing was that they were coming from women and children, heart-wrenching, horrifying cries. I threw my bike down and dropped to the ground because I didn't want whoever was inside that huge house to see me. I felt such a great terror wash over me. I felt like I was lost, that I was going to end up just like those people, when suddenly I heard footsteps behind me, and I thought to myself, this is it for me. It was a young man coming back from his job who bent down to help me up and asked if I was okay. You have no idea the relief I felt in my soul. I told him yes, thank you very much, that I had fallen after hearing those terrifying screams and cries. But he laughed it off and said, "Don't worry, they're not real." Well, they are, because we can hear them, but they're not from living people. There's absolutely no one alive in that place since the authorities came to evict the bad people. What you're hearing are the screams of those souls that perished in that place a long time ago. I really couldn't believe it. My face was one of total surprise because I swear to you, it sounded so clear, like they were right there in that same place, doing terrible things to all those people. The man even went inside one of the houses which didn't have doors or windows. He told me, "Look, if you want to see for yourself, there's no one here anymore." I, very scared, went in because I couldn't just leave without knowing. I walked around the ground floor of the house and even the backyard, shining my flashlight everywhere, and indeed there was no one there. There was also no one in the next house, which was practically attached. At that moment, the scream stopped. I left because I couldn't stand the heavy, horrible vibe I felt, not to mention the nauseating smells that filled the inside. I thanked the man for letting me know I wasn't in danger and for keeping me company. But before he left, he told me I should leave too, as there had been people who went to those houses to do urban explorations, including a couple of friends who disappeared there. They went into the house, but no one ever saw them come out. And even though the authorities searched for them, nothing was ever found. So I grabbed my bike and left without thinking twice. But as I was leaving, I had the urge to look back at the house, and I almost lost control when I saw two figures peeking out of an upstairs window. They weren't people, I'm sure of that. And suddenly in the distance I could hear laughter instead of wails. They were very sinister cackles coming from that same place. I took it as if they were mocking me, something so macabre and terrifying that I never want to experience it again. Without a doubt, I never went back to those places, especially not alone. Always listen to the warnings. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you all a great evening.